Hello everybody, I'm Meg Moss, CEO of the NCS, and I'm here today talking to Pritesh and Shami of Aashna for the Student Counsellor magazine. Welcome both of you, and thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Oh, thanks. Hello.
Hi.
So I know that people will be really interested in what you're doing, so let's find out a little bit more about you both. So I guess the best place to start is kind of, who are Aashna?
Okay. So I'm Shami. Aashna is a therapeutic space and community with social justice at the heart. I'm a counsellor, and I work in private practice and co-founded Aashna a few years ago with Pritesh.
Mm-hmm. So I'm a co-founder, as Shami said, and so Aashna, as Shami said, is a social justice project, but we're also a therapeutic space that supports therapists from different backgrounds, modalities, to hold their practices here, who believe in our ethos of embracing difference and diversity in all its forms. So it's attracting therapists and clients from marginalised communities mostly, and creating home for that rich difference.
Oh, wonderful. That sounds like it's something that's really needed at the moment, all the time, especially at the moment. So what's the story behind Aashna? Was there kind of a pivotal moment that inspired you to start?
So Pradesh and I met at when we were in training. We trained at the Minster Centre together. For me personally, I don't think there was a pivotal moment. I think there was a kind of a growing awareness of needing a space that reflected us, through our training, through our private practice, our own personal journeys and experiences as British, second generation British Asians, really aware of a space that felt inclusive, that connected with our diversity, our intersectionalities.
Yeah.
Again, like maybe not a pivotal moment as such, but I do remember Shami and I, when we first thought of the concept or what we were thinking about in terms of creating Aashna, we were sitting in a cafe in East London after we started to rent a room somewhere. And we're like, we can do this. But beyond that, there was, well, actually, why do we want to do it? And it's exactly as Shami said, we wanted to create a home for our differences and us that we felt wasn't represented in the field or the world as such, and to represent us really, and others like us. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. You saw that there was something missing that was really needed, and took that time, and you spent your energy in building that up together.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what would you like people watching or people reading to know about what you do?
I think it's important for people to know that we in terms of the way we work and the way we think, that we really put intersectionality culture at the forefront of our practice, and that it's embedded in who we are as Aashna. We really want to embody that thinking, and very much that we are a very warm and welcoming practice along with that.
I think from the way that we created Aashna was very much with our culture and our intersectionality in mind. So if I think about, if you come to my home, there's a certain kind of welcoming that is a part of that. So the offering of food, our culture, the warmth, the invitation, where you really are guests, and it's a privilege for us for you to come to our home. With that in mind, there's an essence of our, like my culture, my Hindu, my British Asianness in that. So that is, I feel, transmitted and embodied in the building in itself. So from the moment you walk in, there's an invitation to take off your shoes if you wish to, and step into a space that is filled with richness of our faith, culture, our colour, our queerness, etc.
That sounds really wonderful, and I definitely get a sense from you both, you know, having seen things that you've spoken about, things on social media, that seems to kind of permeate through everything that you do, both online and digitally, and obviously kind of in the room, in person. It sounds really, really lovely. So is there any kind of particular moment or memory in your history to date that stands out for you?
Should I go?
Yeah, go first.
Yeah, okay. So we opened we got the keys in March 2000, no, was it March?
We got the keys in
July 2017.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're thinking March. And we've always had these kind of blessing ceremonies in Aashna. They're called hovens. It's a puja, and it's inviting the elements to support us and everyone that uses the space for healing. So it has a strong spiritual element. But one of the biggest moments is my grandmother did because of COVID and the restrictions, she did the ceremony this time for us, the hoven. And for me, that was absolutely massive, because this space has really been built and carries our ancestors, our stories, our traditions, our values, the love that comes through. And it's been really held by our family members, our friends, the wider community. And we really are creating a family here, which is really lovely. So that for me has been one of the biggest memories. Sha?
So for me, similarly, I think it's around culture as well. I think it was our first workshop that we had, and as Pritesh has mentioned, you know, we invite people to take their shoes off, especially for our workshops, because we're sitting on cushions. It's very relaxed. Obviously, we have comfortable chairs if people can't sit on cushions, but we sit around together
in the Beauty room.
Yeah. In this room, in the Beauty room. But we also provide food. And that's part of our culture. You know, we provide food. It's an Indian vegetarian meal for us all to share. And for us, that's really familiar. It's what we do. We welcome, it's our guest for feeling at home, you know, and feeling that acceptance.
And it's about eating together, isn't it?
It's eating, yeah. Exactly. It's that sense of communal sharing together. And I think for us, it felt very normal. Of course, we're going to do this. I think the impact was seeing how other people responded to it and how much it connected with their wanting of belonging and togetherness and a sense of bonding that was created, that I don't think it would have been the same unless we had that experience together. So that's one of my favorite parts of our workshops, actually, is the sharing of food.
And it's one of the people in one of our workshops said there's a certain magic that happens in the building, and it's not just these separate elements, but something that's all coming together. And that was really lovely for us to hear, that there's a certain magic about Aashna and the way that we carry our events, or like you said, our online profile, or whatever it may be, which we didn't know we were brewing, but it's kind of there, which is really lovely, you know. Yeah.
I think that's, you know, you've really brought yourselves, but not just yourselves. You're not bringing yourselves, you're bringing your culture, like you're bringing your family and your history and all of this kind of richness and depth to what you do. And that made me feel really happy listening to you talk about that. It's really nice, and it's actually not something that you hear about in kind of therapeutic spaces very often. So it's lovely to know that you're kind of there in the world, in that bubble, doing that somewhere.
I think it's about the collective, you know, what we're learning more and more, the thing that it's what Shami said about belonging. I think what we're inviting here is a collective response, otherwise maybe sometimes an often individualistic society. It's about family, about traditions, about values, about culture, but then also acknowledging that all of that, we're kind of queering that concept or that idea as well, to be with us in the world that we live in the field that we are in.
Yeah, it does. It does. You're kind of expanding it out into a way that it isn't normally found.
Yes.
Yeah, but it sounds like it's really working, and that people are really responding really, really well to it. There's definitely something there, maybe something that we're missing as a culture as a whole, that you're kind of bringing out and bringing through. So I guess kind of off the back of that, that sounds like, so those memories really stand out for you. Is there anything that you kind of, something that you've done as an organisation together or as individuals that you're particularly proud of that you want to share?
Sure.
I think not one particular thing. I think in the way that we're evolving as a practice, in terms of the space that we're creating, and that we are continually critically thinking about how we communicate with each other, how we work ethically, with integrity, and being really reflective of our practice, and sort of really thinking about how we work in depth as well. I don't know.
Yeah, I think just to add, I mean, as a practice, you know, where we rent out rooms, that's there, of course it is. And as a practice where we facilitate and represent in our unique ways, we're constantly, Shami and I are constantly reflecting on how we run not only the business, but how we are representing in the world, and how we kind of find a way for these places or these parts of us to truly be in the field. You know, and that's been really evident during times of COVID, where we've had to really think of our practice and the way we are with our therapists that use the space or use the rooms, and not have a blanket kind of contract, if you like, with each one of them. We're really individually looking at what's going on for them in their world, in their life, and how we can support them and help them stay and be a part of the community. That doesn't fall into typical kind of hierarchical business models. You know, and one of the things our therapists have said to us is how they feel really loved and held in the way that we've supported them through the times of COVID. And we pride ourselves on that, to not have work with the individual, but the collective as well. Not be stuck in binary ways of thinking, and we're constantly reflecting on that, actually.
Yeah. I think that's definitely will have been very important over the past year. So I guess that in bringing it back to the therapy element, has your perception, so your experience of counselling psychotherapy changed since, I know you were in training and then you set up Aashna? Has it changed since you began that?
Sure.
Yeah, I think there's been such a movement from when we first, when we started Aashna, we had just come out of training, and it felt like a very different, not a very different world. It's still very, but I think there's been so much, there's been so many movements and waves of thinking in terms of race and intersectionality and power and privilege and things that we had been thinking about when we started the practice, and how do we speak more about it in a way that we can connect with other therapists, with organizations. So I think that there has been a movement and a change in terms of the therapeutic environment. I don't know if you would agree in that way.
I think what someone once said to us, that the space has come about at a particular time where it was really needed. And as Shami has said before, you know, we created Aashna maybe with naivety at points, you know, something that felt so in our consciousness that is needed and has to be there. But the ripples in which it spread in the field has been quite taken us, really. And I think we're what we've acknowledged is that there's been so many generations of movements, but we're at a particular time with COVID, where the world is at the moment, that the space is mirroring something that is consciously happening in the world that we can't escape now. So I think the movements have always been there, but I think they're just becoming more conscious awakenings at the moment, which is wonderful to be witnessing, actually. And we're a part of it. We are all a part of it.
So as part of that, you know, is there something that as a collective, as a community of therapists, is there something that from your perspective, as people kind of involved in these kind of conversations on a regular basis, is there something that you have identified that the profession might need to do more of?
Well, one key thing I think is, this is all deeply uncomfortable stuff, isn't it? In terms of the different movements that are happening. And I think we all need to keep working on that discomfort, in the discomfort, in that uncomfortable place, because for us, that's where we believe change really happens. And it's needed more and more of. I think organizations are doing this more and more, where they're exploring their privileges, they're exploring their internalized racism, they're exploring structural issues, power dynamics. And I think that needs to keep happening. It can't stop. And I feel like, you know, with COVID, you know, Mother Nature said, you go inside and you really reflect on what's going on in the world, right? And don't come out until you know. So I think this is a real awakening moment for us in our lives, where we really have to face stuff.
I think it's definitely for me, as someone at a level in the profession who's talking from a professional body, organizational, policy kind of led perspective. It's definitely something that, you know, that like you say, movements have been going on for years, but we really are at a time when everybody is focused on making significant changes and really talking to people in the right ways about how to do those things. And these things seem to all have really come together over the past year, where we had to just really think really hard about what we're doing.
I want to add to that. I think what we're learning through our Let's Get Uncomfortable encounters is, how do we have these difficult, uncomfortable conversations and sit with each other in that discomfort? Acknowledge that we've all been a part of these indoctrinated systems, that none of us are free of it, no matter what color or rich intersectionality we come from. We are all part of these systems and have been for so long. And how do we have these dialogues that are not about destroying the other or shaming the other or getting into power dynamics, but while acknowledging all of that's there, but find new ways through love to really have these conversations as a collective, and find ways to heal and move forward.
I think, you know, you mentioned the encounters, and I really want to talk about those. I think they're really important. Can you tell us a little bit more about the encounters, what they are, and that?
Well, in terms of how we came about with the encounters, I suppose the seeds of the Let's Get Uncomfortable encounters came from our experiences in training. And we had a great training.
Real love for our Minister Centre.
Real respect and real love for the training. However, I think when we left, we realized that there was parts of us that were not met. And so those seeds were really about how can we make training more inclusive, where the fabric of diversity and difference is embedded right from day one. And so it was born from that. Then when Pradesh and I wrote an article for
Therapy Today
around that. We also wanted to do this in a collective way, in a collaborative way. So we were really lucky to work with some great organizations and people that had been thinking about this in the field sort of long before us and have done a lot of work in this. We affiliated with Barton, with the Minster Centre, with
PCU and PCSR.
Yeah, to create a working group,
which is still running now.
Yeah,
we just want to add. So through that collaboration, again, acknowledging that people before us, our ancestors or organizations before us, have really paved the way, and that it's our responsibility to carry on the discussions. And we're still working together, and because of COVID, we had to postpone the encounters that were going to happen last year.
They were going to happen last year, yeah.
So they're going to happen this year towards the end of the year, fingers crossed. But the idea is that the encounters that we all sit together, and each of these organizations holding the space at Aashna, infused in the magic, and hopefully what really emerged was that there were amazing encounters where we were really sharing our lived experiences and experimenting with what happens outside in the world, in the room, and seeing what dialogues emerge and what learning evolves in order to support the people that attended in their processing. That was really amazing, and the feedback's been phenomenal from them.
And it was, we obviously, as Pratesh said, we cancelled our encounters last year because obviously because of COVID. We didn't want to do it online. We really it was very clear for us as a group, as the working group, that we wanted to hold it in person, in this space, as a collective, because it's such an embodied experience. It's so impactful, it's so powerful, that the holding is so important, because the feelings that come out of some of these encounters and gatherings can be really emotive, and I think for collective healing we need to be bodies together, sitting together, facing each other, seeing each other's eyes, and really feeling the feeling for things to change internally. So I think we really sort of stuck to our guns in terms of not doing something online.
Yeah, and that does really make sense. I can see why you wouldn't want to have that space where you can't be with the other people involved. So if you've got some plans for the end of the year, all being well, I guess. If there are people that wanted to get involved with those things, is there an opportunity for people to come and do that?
Absolutely. So the LGU, the Let's Get Uncomfortable Encounters, we actually sold tickets for them earlier last year, and I think we're at capacity. There might be on odd ones that you can definitely check into and see, but of course please do attend. We're really aware that we're based in London, and these are conversations that need to happen across the country. So we're really thinking about, because of online and Zoom, how we might facilitate something. But again, like Shami said, we really want to stay true to what we're about, which is about embodied encounters in the space that have a container to hold the material that is being, for us to hold it ethically. So the accounts happen at the end of the year. If you want to get involved, please do attend, or actually sign up to our newsletter, because we'll have more encounters and more discussions. And also we've got this amazing resource on our website Jamie Crabb has created as part of his felt responsibility, and has collated all the amazing work of other organizations that, you get these emails saying this and this and this and this, and Jamie's put it all together and created this library of hundreds of articles, clips, videos, podcasts, all related to the subject matter and intersectionality. And that's absolutely free for people to access, and a great resource for students or anyone that's interested in the work that we do here, or other organizations, to really educate themselves.
I've read through quite a few of the resources, and it's an absolutely phenomenal collection of resources, and I really wanted to talk about those a little bit. So you've mentioned what they are and how people can access them. For the people who have accessed them, have you had a lot of feedback from there? Kind of what do people say about it?
Well, firstly, a real thanks to Jamie for creating it, and for everything that's quite dispersed at times to be, and it's ever evolving, so to be put in one place, it makes it accessible and easy. So that's the key thing. The feedback has been that it's been really helpful to have it all in one place, and then just type in keywords and get certain things come up has been really important. The encounters have spiraled in the sense that people have said, when is there more? We want more. And the enthusiasm to carry on these discussions has been really amazing for us to witness, because initially when we thought who's going to come? And then it propelled into these amazing things. So we feel really excited by that people want to share and join us in these conversations that are so important to us. And just to add, our hope is to then increase these encounters to other parts of our identities, not just focusing on race at the forefront, but sexuality or gender, etc. As we, expand the encounters. And just to name, when we talk about these encounters and race, we do hold in mind other parts of our identity, so not to lose them, forget them. But at the forefront, we're thinking about race.
Yeah. Amazing. So I think one of the things that I wanted to check in with you both about is, you've been talking so openly about diversity in counselling, about race and about intersectionality. What have you learned from doing that? Has anything come out of that that's been surprising for you?
How difficult it is.
Yeah.
How difficult it is to talk about it. And the more, actually, I was just thinking about it the other day, the more we talk about it, the more we realize how much more we need to talk about it. It's like it feels like there's such a long way to go to really have a sense of what it means to experience each other, so as human beings,
and in our different bodies. I think one thing that came out for both of us was that none of us are free of it. Our kind of indoctrinations of the systems that we live in. So in my brown body, how I experience the black body, or how I experience the white body, and vice versa in those spectrums and other colours. There's a richness to that, because we've all been part of the same systems, and how each colour holds trauma, racial trauma, in their own unique ways, and how that manifests in society, or how we even engage in talking about it because of our indoctrinations is so different at times. And then to find a common language, that's so the nuances of actually what we're talking about has been a surprise for us, and a huge learning, and how to engage in that.
And I think on the other side of it, in talking about it, in trying to be as open as we can, and engaging in all these really difficult conversations, I mean, ultimately it is also for the aim and the benefit of the client that you're sitting with, and in feeling comfortable within ourselves, in being able to talk about it, to think about our own intersectionalities, think about our own internal biases, that we can sit with our clients in a way that they can be met, or that we can have these difficult conversations with them, because otherwise we'll be missing something, and they will not feel like they're being held or met in a way that they need to be.
Yeah, no, that seems like it's been quite a huge thing to really learn from this process, and it sounds like I think a lot of people could really benefit from going through these processes as well, the processes that you've both gone through. Is there anything that you found particularly challenging throughout the process?
I think some of the things we've named here, haven't we, in terms of like when Aashna kind of came about at a time where this physical space started to represent something that was happening. I know there are other physical spaces around, so by no means am I saying they're not relevant, but our felt experience was we could really feel the need for it, and the pull then into these difficult discussions. And then the challenges again is like, well, we're a space of difference and diversity and inclusivity. We have to grapple with the difference, diversity, inclusivity, because in our own differences, how we sit with the other and their differences is a real rich intersubjective space that we're constantly grappling with power dynamics, with biases, projections, prejudices, all the, as we all know. So that in itself has been quite a process that is still ongoing, actually.
To actually to embody a space that's truly diverse and inclusive is hard work. It takes a lot of thinking, because we're constantly having to check what it means to be a certain way, to think a certain way, and reflect on ourselves, like, are we doing this right? Is this right for somebody else? There's always a questioning.
And just to follow on from that, what's naturally evolving is a creative team. So we have now evolved, going into our 4th year, where Jamie was in the periphery supporting us and becoming more and more of an active member. But with that, we have Shoshi Ashuri, who's supported us in different ways with our Aashna Plus service. And we formed this creative team that is just at the beginning to help us to think critically about Aashna, what we are, what we're doing, and slowing down in processes to really make sure that what we're doing is what we want to be doing, and representing us in the way that we want to, and we are doing the work that we need to be doing. So just to acknowledge that we are formulating a team that's about collective, about collaboration.
And who support us so much in our thinking and our emotional journey and our reflective journey with the space.
I get this. The sense I get from talking to you is that, it sounds like you're taking on a lot, both of you personally as well. It must be quite an intense personal journey that you've gone through. I know, being a therapist in any form is an intense personal journey anyway, but there's an additional level of that. And I just want to say that I'm in awe of what you've put together here. You're telling me more about what you've done and what you're doing, and the impact that that's had is just it's just incredible. Now I know that, so we're kind of talking here probably mostly to student counsellors, because obviously this video is going out mainly to student counsellors. Is there anything that you would say to someone who's interested in getting more involved in talking about race and talking about intersectionality and talking about all of the other issues, sexuality and gender? What can they do? Are there, say, a few things that they could be doing more of now while they're still studying, to really grow that part of their practice and themselves?
I think one thing comes to mind straight away is really thinking about their narrative, thinking about their story. We don't think about that enough, I don't think. It is really delving into your own difference even as a starting point in your own development, your own journey around intersectionality, because once you start thinking about your own, then you begin to think about the other as well.
Just to add to that, I'm thinking, like, if I give the example of, as we know, I think UKCP, 97% of all practitioners are white from there. So if I think about that, and if you're in a training organization that is dominated by white students or white staff, I encourage you to look at your whiteness in that sense, and what that means in terms of how you've been indoctrinated by the systems that lead you to be who you are in your whiteness. And if you're in a predominantly heterosexual, heteronormative, Eurocentric system, what does that mean that you are not looking at within yourself and inviting you to look at it, and then thinking about how you might miss others who are not a part of those same systems as you, and start thinking in more contemporary ways. There's amazing stuff coming out now from different thinkers, organizations that reflect more contemporary ways of practicing, to integrate that into your thinking and your organization thinking as you're training, because the traditional theories are very white and Eurocentric. They don't meet the clients of today, which are from really diverse backgrounds. So to kind of evolve in your thinking would be my encouragement, and to challenge your organizations if they're not meeting you in your difference, to make sure that they are doing the work that they need to, so they are there to see you and witness you and hold you in your unique difference.
That is a really good point, and that's something that we as professional organisations should also be challenging our training providers to do as well, and that's kind of what part of what NCS is going to be doing as well, is making sure that it's current and relevant and brings all of these important conversations in. And I think
sort of thinking around that as well is when we think, I think in training, when we're looking at sort of Eurocentric theories as we do, there, and I know it for myself, there is a sort of taking it in and thinking this is the way to work. And if you come from diverse backgrounds, or it feels like you have to fit into something that you don't fit into, and it is really important to sort of really critically think about these theories and know that there can be a different way. And as Pritesh said, that there are other theories and other ways of thinking that we can bring in to the theories that we already work with.
And I think that's what Aashna represents. There are other ways. There are different ways. We can do things differently that are able to support the marginalised groups as well as the mainstream.
Is there, that you know of, a really great place for people to start reading about those kind of new theories from different, are there any thinkers you'd recommend? Are there any particular books, anything like that?
Yeah, so we can see our book list at the back there.
Yes, yep.
So there's lots of stuff, isn't there? So if we're thinking about queerness, Meg John Barker, and how to integrate that into our thinking would be amazing. There's Resmaa Menakem, My Grandmother's Hands, which is very current, is a good way as a starting point to think about racial trauma. And, actually Shoshi introduces us, and Jamie introduced us to a lot of podcasts and reading that are from other disciplines that help inform the way that we think now. So for example, queering theories, etc., and how to apply them into Aashna and the practice and the space, or even the way that we work. And then there are people who are releasing material like Eugene Ellis from Barton on Race Conversations, which is a great book. And then there's Dwight Turner on intersectionality, which is a great book. Then there's Sarah Ahmed on queer phenomenology, which helps how to do things off center or off the straight line. So there's plenty of stuff there. And a lot of that's on our resource library as well. So
yes, of course. So people could easily go there and
start
have a look at what's on there.
Yeah.
But trawling through. So thinking about that, I know that there are a lot of resources that you've kind of mentioned, and in the Let's Get Uncomfortable resources, have you kind of got a top 3? Is that too much to ask?
Should we say the top 3 that we've listened to this week that we both have?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, should we do that? So there's, I don't know her surname. Can I tell you? Because we share a lot of resources in our creative team, which we are shared by Shoshi and Jamie. So I'll just bring them up. We've got Anjali Nath Day on radical unlearning. It's a podcast that's been shared by Shoshi. And then there is another podcast on neurodiversity and neurodiverse ways of being and existing and thinking. And that was by Will.
Yeah, it's a really good podcast on neurodiversity and creativity.
And that was by Nick Walker.
Yeah.
And other kind of creative readings that we're immersed in is by Octavia Butler.
Yeah.
Trying to get the book out here.
Here we have Parable of the Sower. Okay.
And these are just possibilities of how to live in a different future. And
we mentioned My Grandmother's Hands, which is...
And really a lot of our books are about stories or narratives of individuals which we immerse ourselves in with our theoretical minds, and querying the concepts or ideas and constantly critically reflecting on them to help our practice, not only in the chair, but how we run Aashna.
Yeah, thank you. Lots of things for people to look for.
Yeah.
And I guess we're coming to the end of our chat, but is there anything, if anyone's interested, wanting to support what you do, find out more, how could they do that if they wanted to?
You can subscribe to our newsletter. You can support actually our Aashna Plus service. I mean, if you go on our website, www.aashna.uk.
You can have a little tagline here, maybe. I don't know.
I always forget.
Yeah, we can do that.
And follow us on Twitter,
Facebook. We're on social media.
Yeah.
And
Instagram. We're on Instagram.
Yeah. We're not doing.
We don't. That's it.
That's not us. We have Jav, who is so phenomenal, who creates on. You may have noticed the last few months our newsletters are very different, and Jav's been creating these phenomenal things that I wouldn't be able to do. And he's really been supporting us on our creative kind of social media content and putting our stuff out there in a new, exciting way. So I just want to honor him. He's really brilliant. Join our newsletter and please support our service, because we support our therapists, supporting individuals from marginalized groups on long-term relational, culturally sensitive psychotherapy. That's different ways you can look into us and support us.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. I have loved every second of this. And I hope that we can talk again soon.
Likewise.
Best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.